For decades, the Three Gorges Dam has stood as a symbol of China's engineering might. A project so vast that NASA said it measurably altered the Earth's rotation, making days 0.06 microseconds longer. The Three Gorges Dam generates more electricity than any other power plant on Earth, enough to light up more than 70 million homes a year.
But on the edge of the Himalayas, China is planning something even more ambitious, on a river you may never have heard of.
This is the project of a century.
The most impressive power generation system ever envisioned.
It's the hydropower equivalent of a mission to Mars.
But to build it, China must tunnel through mountains that are still rising in one of the most earthquake-prone places on the planet. And that's not all. What happens here could affect hundreds of millions of lives downstream in neighboring India and Bangladesh, risking new tensions over water. The engineering is unprecedented. So are the stakes.
There is like this stark beauty. It was called the roof of the world because it's the highest part of the world.
From the glacial melt here, the Yarlung Sangpo River flows over 1,000 kilometers east along the edge of the Tibetan Plateau, before performing what many consider a geological miracle at a location known as the Great Bend, right where the plateau meets the Himalayas.
It does this mad turn, so it stops flowing east and does a big hook and starts coming back and flowing west.
It's about a 180-degree bend where the river drops about 2,000 meters in elevation in just a 50-kilometer period. Then the river leaves China, goes into India, and there it's known as the Brahmaputra. And then it empties out in the Bay of Bengal.
亚下水电工程体量大、周期长、影响远。
But it's back at the Great Bend in Medog County, Tibet, where construction of the Yasha, or Lower Yarlung hydropower project, officially began in July 2025. It's a place so remote, a road only reached it in 2013.
The gorge of the Great Bend is the biggest canyon in the world. It's literally 3 times deeper and a little bit longer than the Grand Canyon in Arizona.
It's this natural drop, the world's steepest and deepest, that also gives the plateau its greatest hydropower potential. Those following the project say China's ambition is not just to tap this power, but to utterly dominate it.
The energy generation from this project will break like records in like many different dimensions. It will be by far the world's largest individual source of energy, 60 gigawatt of installed capacity.
The Chinese government has said that this will generate about 300 billion kilowatt hours a year. That's more than the UK uses an entire year. It's also about 3 times more than the Three Gorges generates.
With little known officially about the project, including the construction timeline, analysts outside China have had to rely on social media, state television, and satellite images to piece together its design.
Not so long ago, an article was published in Nature, one of the premier peer-reviewed academic journals, that roughly describes the project as a diversion project.
Unlike a traditional walled dam, observers believe this one would be made up of a series of hydropower stations along the river. Theories vary, but some outside experts suggest there would be one upstream dam with a large reservoir to regulate the water flow. This would be followed by a second smaller dam at the top of the gorge, where water would be diverted from the Great Bend through the mountains via a number of underground tunnels and turbines, before potentially entering another smaller re-regulation dam at the bottom of the gorge. This could stabilize the flow before the river continues downstream into India.
This will be quite an engineering feat. After all, you're literally reconstructing a whole river underground. The volume of water that will be diverted here will be similar to the discharge of a medium-sized river, such as like the Rhine in Europe.
It's a concept already tested further upstream at the Jinping dams, where engineers diverted the river through the mountains.
But what is really novel about this project is just like its sheer scale, where like many engineers would have probably not believed that building such a project in such a remote location would be even possible.
The government announced the project would cost 1.2 trillion yuan. That's about 167 billion US dollars. And that compares to the Three Gorges when it was built, completed back in the 2000s. It ended up at a cost of about $37 billion. So this is 4 to 5 times as much as that.
But experts say for China, this project is not just about generating power. It's a core tenet of its national economic strategy.
China is an engineering state. And one of the things that, having an engineering society in China has done is that it's a government that likes to build its way out of problems.
The dam, to some extent, is an extension of China's bias towards production, towards investment. But it comes at a very interesting time. China is striving to make this transition from investment to consumption-based growth. So the dam at this point would provide a critical demand boost at a time when consumption and investment have been weak.
It's a project that promises an economic jolt for sectors like construction, cement, and steel.
When the project was announced, it rippled through the economy. Companies like Power Construction Corp of China, China Engineering Corp, Huaxin Cement, their share prices all surged.
But at another level, the dam will also enable China to produce more renewable energy and help that green transition.
With a target of net zero emissions by 2060, China has said the project could cut 300 million tons of carbon emissions a year by replacing fossil fuel power. It's also about energy security, generating more power domestically as demand surges for energy-hungry tech. But building this record-shattering mega-project in one of the most remote and geologically unstable regions on Earth tests the boundaries of modern engineering.
In order to build a dam like this, you're dealing with intense energies and intense altitudes. Landslides, freezing, malfunctioning equipment, people falling off the side of mountains. They're building this massive project on a site where 6 tectonic plates connect up.
That makes this one of the world's most earthquake-prone regions. In fact, in 1950, a magnitude 8.6 earthquake, one of the largest ever recorded in human history, occurred in the area.
For the last 40 years, China has developed the best hydropower engineers in the world by far. They're not magicians, and they can't stop tectonic plates, and they can't stop earthquakes. So that's a massive danger. And even if the earthquake doesn't happen, these type of projects tend to have slow disasters happen within them. So they seep plastic and concrete into the surrounding environment, and that changes the entire environment of that place slowly over time.
The International Campaign for Tibet also warns that dam projects frequently displace thousands from ancestral lands and sever traditional livelihoods with little consultation or support. The Three Gorges project, which required the forcible relocation of 1.3 million people from a much more heavily populated region, submerged large sections of the river valley, damaging habitats for many endemic species. China has done this before. Over the last 2 decades, China's 12 dams along the Mekong have reshaped the river and the lives that depend on it downstream.
The Mekong runs about 4,500 kilometers from the Tibetan Plateau in China through Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. This river is the lifeblood of people for those countries. Tens of millions of people rely on natural resources that come right out of the river. China doesn't share information on its dam building with the downstream countries of the Mekong. It doesn't let the countries know the designs of the dams, how they're going to be operated when ground breaks, when the reservoirs start to fill, let alone how they're operating in real time.
Those who study the river say this has left communities in the dark and unable to rely on the river's seasonal floods and droughts.
The Mekong is mighty because of its seasonal flood pulse. And this flood pulse drives the Mekong's fishery, it drives the agricultural production. What dams do is reduce the peak. At times, they can reduce the peak downstream by 20%, 2,000 kilometers away.
But in areas closer to the dam, like here in northern Thailand, those fluctuations are felt even more acutely. In the dry season, the pattern reverses. Water released for hydropower can push the river levels 3 times higher than normal. As a result, environmentalists say the ecology of the river has been disrupted and the reproductive cycles of the fish and birds upended. What were once thriving fishing villages are now diminished.
ถ้าอู้ถึงเขื่อนเนาะเมื่อก่อนนี้มันน้ำมันปกติแต่เดี๋ยวนี้มันน้ำบ่ปกติละขึ้นลงไข่ม้าก็ม้าไข่แห้งก็แห้งไข่ขึ้นก็ขึ้นมันเลยทำให้ปลาผลกระทบเรื่องปลาเรื่องหาปลาหากินนี่ยากเลยเดี๋ยวนี้นะปลาก็ไม่ค่อยมีหาได้ก็บ่ได้ขายอย่างนี้ผลกระทบหนักทำมาหากินแล้วก็ยังก็ยากแล้วก็ปลาน้ำก็
People there have been suffering for years. They lose their livestock, they lose their equipment, they lose their gardens and farms when these sudden pulses of water come through.
It's the same lack of data and transparency that has fueled concern downstream from the lower Yarlung hydropower project in India and Bangladesh. While India's Brahmaputra river is fed by other tributaries too, experts say nearly 40% of its fertile sediment comes from the Yarlung Sangpo's gorge, sustaining millions of lives and livelihoods.
Both countries have come to China and said that they want more information about it. They want to know what the downstream effects are going to be. And they're wanting, more than anything else, assurances that the downstream flow of the river that turns into the Brahmaputra won't be too impacted by this hydropower project.
The border here has long been disputed, and reports suggest officials in New Delhi fear Beijing could weaponize the water, controlling it for political leverage.
The Chinese government's counter to concerns from India, Bangladesh, and others has been that the same amount of river coming out of the canyon now will be coming out of it after it's done, and there won't be huge retention dams that could allow them to hold back water in the case of some sort of geopolitical conflict in the future.
中方修建雅鲁藏布江下游水电工程，经过严谨、科学论证，不会对下游国家生态环境、地质、水资源权益造成不良影响。
But still, tensions remain. India is countering China with the construction of its own megadam on the upper Siang, 90 kilometers below the border, even as it faces local resistance and environmental scrutiny.
Without knowledge exchange and cooperation across that border, then it's really easy to play on people's fears.
And what I think it's really important is that these decisions are made on quantifiable, open and objective data that enable us international scientists, but also importantly people whose livelihoods are at stake in that river basin actually have a say. The objective of this discussion here is not to vilify China or to basically put this project into a bad light. Indeed, it would have a major impact and major benefit for China's target to become more carbon neutral, which would have major implications for the global climate.
If China can pull this off, then it's a statement to the rest of the world to say, we're reshaping rivers, we're creating clean energy, we're providing our economy and companies with infinite clean energy that it can use to build the economy of the future.
About 80% of the global population without electricity live on a single continent.
Satellite imagery of African cities compared to satellite imagery of Western cities at night. You can see the darkness versus the light.
This lack of power matters. Electricity consumption and GDP growth are closely linked. In fact, virtually every wealthy nation on the planet uses power abundantly. And this isn't just about keeping the lights on, it's about economic independence.
Electricity is a fundamental right. Without that, you can't have health, education, anything delivered.
It also holds back industrialization.
Pretty much any other country in the history of the world, the way they got rich is via industrialization.
And mass production with its assembly lines.
That all happened because they had power of one sort or another.
And that's been true for everyone, from the UK to the US to more recently the likes of Singapore, Taiwan, and South Korea. But why isn't Africa, the continent with the most sunshine hours in the world, getting the energy it needs for its own industrial revolution? Finding the cash for vast energy projects is one thing.
The size of investment is a hurdle. It's huge.
A country needs 1,000 to 2,000 kilowatt hours of energy per person per year to take off. And in many African countries,
that number is at less than 200 kilowatt hours per person per year. So we're way off in terms of where we need to be.
To say Africa is energy poor is in many ways a mischaracterization. The continent is incredibly rich in natural resources.
The share of minerals globally, Africa is home to around 30%. If it comes to crude and gas in particular, we're looking around 10%. There's enormous potential on the hydropower side. Solar is also untapped.
There's also a substantial labor force.
1.5 billion people, median age in Africa is 19. This giant young workforce to power the future.
But despite its vast potential, Africa's lack of functioning energy infrastructure brings huge challenges for industry.
We are using some world-class inspection machine. Like as you can see there, body defect, all are rejected.
In places like Nigeria, the most populous country in Africa, there just isn't enough power being generated or distributed. Manufacturers have been forced to essentially abandon the grid.
Beta Glass, a top performer on Nigeria's stock exchange, which produces packaging for Budweiser, Coca-Cola and Heineken, has been forced to do just that.
You know, right, we cannot connect to national grid because frequently we are having power failure. Because of that, we are having different sorts of power backup,
including liquefied natural gas delivered by tanker and a solar power plant mounted on the roof. These backups are helping scale the business, but they're a luxury only a large company can afford. Across much of Africa, smaller firms are instead using these.
A country can't industrialize using diesel power generators because it's expensive. It's a very expensive option with which to operate factories, and it makes you uncompetitive.
It's just not sufficient to do mass industrialization, mass manufacturing. It's not the kind of thing that can power enough to generate the kind of jobs that the next billion Africans need.
The choice between unreliable energy or expensive energy is hampering African industry. The continent accounts for just 1% of global manufactured exports. But if energy access is so crucial for industrialization, why isn't more being done to fix the problem?
Investment is an issue. It's got huge sunk costs and long payment schedules.
Other factors are political risk and corruption. These are major inhibitors for investment because it's tough to get past Western compliance rules in order to invest.
Governance and political stability. If you're an investor and you're looking to invest in those countries and there's a change in administration, you're concerned whether the contract you signed would be adhered to.
This is a major issue when considering that most financing for energy projects comes from the commercial sector. On top of that, loans to African countries come with what many regard as unjustifiably high interest rates, far higher than countries with similar debt-to-GDP ratios.
Why should African countries borrow so expensive as compared to its peers in other parts of the world?
In spite of many of these hurdles, some African nations are still pressing ahead with massive power projects. And this 500-foot wall of reinforced concrete is one of the most ambitious, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam.
ኢትዮጵያ ህዳሴን የሰራችው ለመበልጸግ አካባቢውን በብርሃን ለመምራት የጥቁር ህዝብ ታሪክ ለመቀየር እንጂ በፍጹም ወንድሞቿን ለመጉዳት ስላልሆነ
Construction began in 2011 and has been plagued by delays and strong opposition from Egypt, which sits downstream.
It's Africa's largest hydroelectric powered dam, so it's quite a huge achievement for the continent and Ethiopia in particular. Their plan is also to export to their neighbors.
Danya Bayeni and Abanesha Sefa are two of the over 60 million Ethiopians who live without power. They hope the dam will bring electricity to their home.
ያው ማብራት ቢኖር ያው ሳትጨናበስ ምን ሳትል ማለት ነው እሰራል እንጨት ራሱ ወይኔ አይነድልህም በተለይ በቃ ይሄ ክረምት ውስጥ ደግሞ በጣም አስቸጋሪ ነው
The couple even gave money to help fund the construction through a government program.
ይገማ ግድቡ አባይ በሀገር ለ8100 ኤብሎ 3 ብር ስልኩ
It made it into kind of like a nationalist project where people donated, people bought domestic bonds.
Civil servants were also encouraged to contribute, as well as the vast diaspora that Ethiopia has. It's something they're very proud of.
ቦንድ ለመግዛት ለኛ ደስተኛ ነን በግሌ ሲጠይቁን ምን ወደ ኋላ ያለ ነገር የለም ገዝተናል የገዛበትን ደግሞ ተሰርቶ ማለቁ ለኛ ደስተኛ ነን
Funding energy infrastructure through crowdsourcing is just one way Africans are taking energy security into their own hands. Green technology is another. The continent has some of the best potential solar sites worldwide. And from Nigeria to South Africa and Morocco, solar panels are now being imported from China at a rapid rate.
There's actually a significant increase in the 12 months to June, amounted in total to around 15 gigawatts of solar panels that were imported, demonstrating the demand for power. Is it transformational? Absolutely, particularly for rural areas where national grids do not extend to.
At a step above that, governments are starting to partner with private companies to do mini grids. These are small power plants that could be renewable and will power, say, a neighborhood or an industrial estate.
And just introducing power to that agricultural rural community just helps in terms of the multiplier effect of allowing other businesses to emerge.
This is partly why the World Bank has launched an initiative to get power to 300 million Africans by 2030. The investment comes with a caveat. Countries must choose the lowest cost solutions, which are almost always renewable.
So we can connect 300, 600 million people into power in no time at all. We don't need to build cables, we don't need to have trucks to move diesel around, we just need to put it on their house and build it.
But some argue that the broader push to prioritise green energy by international institutions and policymakers has made it difficult for African countries to obtain funding for fossil fuel-based projects.
Il y a eu ce que j'ai appelé le fanatisme climatique.
This has irked many African leaders who want fuel, any fuel, to help lift their nations out of poverty.
Il faut donc que l'Afrique puisse continuer à exploiter ses ressources naturelles pour se développer, pour s'industrialiser.
When we consider what was agreed in Paris 2015, which was a restriction placed on future emissions, which African countries found unfair.
It's not going to bring a just transition to people around the world.
This idea that Western countries could get rich by burning fossil fuels, but Africa should learn from those mistakes, strikes a lot of people as condescending and hypocritical.
Solving Africa's energy insecurity may seem like the continent's problem, but the knock-on effects of an electrified Africa will be global.
If there are jobs in Africa, if there is hope for the future, you're far less likely to find young African citizens wanting to leave.
An energy-secure Africa would create a more secure world. We've got a massive group of young people, and yet there isn't a manufacturing sector that's available to absorb them.
Starting the workers being dominated by local employees means if I move to another factory, I take my experience to here in Africa. So I don't take it to other countries.
It's in the interest of everyone around the world that the last continent that hasn't gone through an industrial revolution does. The argument you'd hear from many African policymakers is whether it's through burning fossil fuels or through some kind of green energy transition, they don't think that matters as much as the fact that it needs to happen.